welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Matt.
And I'm Nina.
And today we're looking at an article called Poles Apart, Why Polar Bears and Penguins Never Meet.
Oh, interesting. You know, I love penguins.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually watching National Geographic the other day, and it was so cute to see the little penguins. And I don't know, I wish that one day I could possibly interact with them in person.
All right, well, you could go all the way to Antarctica to see the penguins.
Yeah, it's going to be very cold, but I think that is on my bucket list.
Yeah, that's a very long trip. But you know, you don't actually need to go as far as Antarctica to see the penguins, because they actually have some penguins that live in places like South Africa and Australia.
Oh, that's cool. So have you seen penguins in Australia?
Yeah, it's actually at the beach in Melbourne. I went to one beach where you can go and see the penguins come in and out, and they're actually very little penguins. So there's small penguins. They're very cute. And
that
a lot
sounds
of people
super cute.
Yeah, a lot of people go there to take pictures of the small penguins. And you can see them swimming and coming in and out of the water.
Can you touch them or interact with them?
I don't think you're allowed to touch them. I didn't try to touch them. I didn't see anyone touching them, but they are like wild animals, so I don't think you're supposed to touch them.
Okay. Well, maybe no one will catch me. All right, so let's get more into this. Why polar bears and penguins never meet, huh?
Polar bears and penguins are among nature's strongest survivors. They both make their homes in environments with temperatures well below zero. Though many people picture these animals living side by side, they actually never meet. Why? Because they live at opposite ends of the planet. Polar bears live in the Arctic, the huge frozen ocean region at the Earth's North Pole. They are perfectly suited to living in such freezing conditions because they have 2 layers of fur and a thick layer of fat to protect them from the cold. But if they have the tools to survive the cold, why are they only found in the far north and not in the far south?
Okay, welcome back to day 1 of Poles Apart, Why Polar Bears and Penguins Never Meet.
All right, so let's get into this informative article. Polar bears and penguins are among nature's strongest survivors. Okay, so they are strong animals and they continue to survive. They're among nature's strongest survivors, means they are some of those survivors. They both make their homes in environments with temperatures well below zero.
Yes.
All right, so that's what makes them nature's strongest survivors. So a survivor is someone or something that continues to live despite facing difficult situations, dangerous situations, or just living in a difficult environment, such as one where the temperatures are constantly well below zero. So you're always cold and it's always cold. I know I would hate to live somewhere like that, but these animals do it and they continue to live, so they are survivors.
Indeed. I've seen these penguins all gather up together when there's like a storm, and it's just so cute. But yes, I am surprised at how tiny or, fragile they look, but they can actually survive such extreme weather conditions.
That's right. All right, so I have an example sentence. Ben is a survivor. He never gives up even when life is hard.
Okay. Continuing, though many people picture these animals living side by side, they actually never meet. Why? Because they live at opposite ends of the planet. Okay, so opposite means very different, or in this case, it means the other side of something. So, for example, Andy and Vanessa live on opposite sides of the city. So, usually when you're on opposite sides is the farthest you could be from each other, right?
All right, now let's go to Hanny.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。今天的课文标题是
poles apart, why polar bears and penguins never meet. 好，那么其中 poles apart 这个片语意思是截然相反，大相径庭，在这边就是呼应北极熊跟企鹅分属于北极跟南极，相隔遥远。那同学们有没有好奇过，为什么北极没有企鹅，南极没有南极熊呢？课文提到说啊，北极熊跟企鹅这两种动物都是自然界中最强韧的生存者，它们栖息在气温远低于0度的极寒环境当中，可是却从来没有相遇过，因为它们就分别生活在地球的两端。我们看一下单字 survivor， 它是表达能在困境中生存者，或是幸存者、生还者。Opposite 当形容词则是表达对面的、另一边的，或是表达相反的。刚刚 Nina 老师说，她曾经看过企鹅们聚集在一起挺过暴风雨的画面，她很惊讶这些看起来又小又脆弱的动物，竟然能够在这么极端的天气里生存。那老师用到 fragile 或是念作 fragile， 它是形容脆弱的、易损坏的，那它是拼作 F-R-A-G-I-L-E。好，那我们接回到课文中。
All right, so let's continue with this article. Polar bears live in the Arctic, the huge frozen ocean region at the Earth's North Pole.
Okay,
So that's on the north of the planet, what you think of as the top of the planet usually when you're looking at a map or a globe. So it's a huge frozen ocean region. So frozen means that a liquid has become a solid because it was very cold or because the temperature was very low. So when we're talking about water, we mean that the water has turned to ice because it's cold, and usually it must be below 0. And in the case of the ocean, it must be even colder than that because it's salty water and needs a colder temperature for it to freeze. And when something freezes, it becomes frozen. So these are similar words that we can use in the adjective for when something freezes, is that it is frozen.
Okay.
So we have an example sentence. The lake was completely frozen by December.
Yes, and continuing, they are perfectly suited to living in such freezing conditions because they have 2 layers of fur and a thick layer of fat to protect them from the cold.
Okay, so that says polar bears are perfectly suited for these Arctic conditions where it's very cold, and they don't seem bothered by the cold. They
Not
even
at all.
swim in that very cold water.
Yes, so they have a thick layer of fat. A layer is a thin piece on top of something. So if it's very cold, you can layer up to feel warm. Another example, I put a layer of jam on my bread.
All right, continuing with the article. But if they have the tools to survive the cold, why are they only found in the far north and not in the far south?
Oh, that's a very good question.
So if these polar bears are able to survive there, why didn't some of them move to the South Pole as well? Why aren't there polar bears on both ends of the Earth?
All right, let's go to Hanny first and then we'll find out. 北极熊是生活在北极，在地球北端大片冰封的海洋区域，它们完全适合生活在这样严寒的环境，因为它们有2层皮毛和厚厚的脂肪层来抵御低温。好，单字 frozen 是形容结冰的，或者是冰冻的、冷冻的。它的相关词性 freezing 可以形容极冷的、冰天冻地的。下一个单字 layer 是名词，它表示层或层次。那它也可以当动词来表达把什么分层放置，或是把什么堆积成层。Nina 老师这时候有提到 layer up 可以表达为了保暖多穿几层衣服的意思。那接回课文中。
All right, so now we've learned a bit about polar bears, that polar bears and penguins live at opposite ends of the Earth, so they do not meet. But now we have this question of why. Why is it that polar bears only live in the north and that penguins only live in the south? Well, we're going to come back with the second part of the article, and we'll see you then.
All right.
The answer lies not in biology, but in geography. Around 200 million years ago, the Earth's continents formed a single landmass. Over millions of years, these continents separated. The ancient ancestors of polar bears happened to live in the regions that became modern-day Europe, Asia, and North America. Therefore, by the time polar bears came into being, Antarctica, home to penguins, was already far, far away.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we learned that polar bears and penguins actually never meet, right? And polar bears are in the North Pole, and for some reason, they are not in the South Pole. And why is that? Even though they can withstand harsh cold weather, right?
So we're going to find out the answer to that question now.
Okay.
The answer lies not in biology, but in geography.
Okay.
So the answer is not about biology or about how the animal's body is suited to live in these conditions, but it's about geography. So what is geography? Well, geography means the physical features of the land. So the shapes of the land, the oceans in between, the things that make up the land around us is the geography. So you can talk about the geography of a place as having lots of mountains and lakes, or you can talk about it being flat like a desert. This is all geography. So we have an example sentence. Lily's knowledge of European geography is excellent.
All right, continuing. Around 200 million years ago, the Earth's continents formed a single landmass. Over millions of years, these continents separated. Okay, so what is a continent? It is a big piece of land. Usually it's all connected, right? That's a continent. And for example, Africa is the second largest continent in the world. All right, so in the past, it was one big land, right? It was not separated into multiple continents. It was just one single landmass.
That's right. That was before these continents moved apart and separated into the continents that we know today. And yeah, that's how the world formed.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to Hanny now and we'll be back.
北极熊有2层皮毛和厚厚的脂肪层来抵御低温，耐得住严寒的环境。可是为什么它们只分布在遥远的北方呢？好，那我们先补充一下 ，Nina 老师用到 withstand 这个动词，它就是表达承受、耐得住或是经得起的意思。那我们接着就来揭晓答案。课文写说答案并不在于生物学，而是在于地理学上。大约2亿年前，地球的陆地曾经是一整块巨大陆块。那么数百万年来，这些陆地就分离了。好，单字 geography 它表示地理或地理学，或者是指地形。continent 表示洲或是大陆。landmass 则是表达整块陆地或者是陆地板块。这边还有2个重点，一个是片语 lie in something， 它可以表达问题或是解决方法等等，它存在于什么，在于什么什么。那么动词 lie 在这边是不及物用，它的3态是 lie lay。Lane. 举例来说 ，She believes that true happiness lies in sharing. 她认为真正的快乐在于分享。第2个重点是 not A but B， 表示不是 A 而是 B。这个用法当中 A、B 的词性必须相同。例如 ，His goal is not to win the game, but to break his own record. 他的目标不是要赢得比赛，而是要打破自己的记录。好，这回到课文中。
All right, so back to our articles. The ancient ancestors of polar bears happened to live in the regions that became modern-day Europe, Asia, and North America. So those are some continents, Europe, Asia, and North America, and that is where we find the ancient ancestors of polar bears. So an ancestor is someone or something that you are descended from. So it can be, if you're talking about people, you can talk about your family going back many generations or your ancestors. Now, you usually wouldn't use this word to refer to someone who is within a generation or two of yourself, like you usually wouldn't call your grandfather your ancestor.
Yeah.
But so you would think about the further back people that you are descended from are your ancestors, and the animals that polar bears descended from or that they came from in the past, those are their ancestors. And they lived in Europe, Asia, and North America.
Okay, so continuing. Therefore, by the time polar bears came into being, Antarctica, home to penguins, was already far, far away. Okay.
All right, let's go to Henny.
刚刚说，大约2亿年前，地球的陆地曾经是一整块巨大的陆块，数百万年来，这些陆地分离了。那么北极熊的远古祖先刚好就居住在现今欧洲、亚洲和北美洲的地区。当北极熊出现时，南极洲早已远在天边了，它们跟企鹅根本没机会相遇。好，单字 ancestor 这个名词它表示祖先。那么 Matt 老师在解释单字时用到 descend 这个动词 descend。descend 这个动词可以表达为什么的后裔或传下来，它还可以表达下降或降临的意思。另外课文他写到说 by the time polar bears came into being 来表达说当北极熊出现时，那这边就用到2个重点咯。第一个by the time 它引导时间副词子句，可以表达到什么的时候，在什么之前。主要子句可以用简单式或者是用完成式来强调动作已经完成。那么 by the time 引导这个时间副词子句，在描述未来情况时，动词要记得用现在式来代替未来式。举例来说 by the time you come back, I will have finished my homework. 等到你回来时，我就已经写完回家作业了。那这是在描述未来情况。By the time 引导的时间副词子句，我们动词是用现在式 come， 主要子句是用未来完成式 will have finished， 强调动作已经完成。第二个重点是 come into being， 它表示开始存在、诞生或是形成。例如 How did the universe come into being？ 就是问说宇宙是如何形成的呢？那我们接着回到课文中。
Okay, so today we've learned a lot about polar bears and penguins, how polar bears live on the North Pole or the north end of the Earth, and on the opposite end, that's where penguins live on the south, and that they don't live together, not because they're not suited to live in each other's environments, not because they couldn't, but it's just where they
ended up,
where they were when these animals became the animals they are today.
Yeah, so imagine if a couple penguins were hanging around polar bears, maybe we would have some penguins in the North Pole right now.
That's right. All right, well, that is the end of our time for today. So now let's review the article again, and we'll see you next time.
All right, see you then.
Polar bears and penguins are among nature's strongest survivors. They both make their homes in environments with temperatures well below zero. Though many people picture these animals living side by side, they actually never meet. Why? Because they live at opposite ends of the planet. Polar bears live in the Arctic, the huge frozen ocean region at the Earth's North Pole. They are perfectly suited to living in such freezing conditions because they have 2 layers of fur and a thick layer of fat to protect them from the cold. But if they have the tools to survive the cold, why are they only found in the far north and not in the far south? The answer lies not in biology, but in geography. Around 200 million years ago, the Earth's continents formed a single landmass. Over millions of years, these continents separated. The ancient ancestors of polar bears happened to live in the regions that became modern-day Europe, Asia, and North America. Therefore, by the time polar bears came into being, Antarctica, home to penguins, was already far, far away.
最后，我们来复习今天课文里面的单字文法。单字的部分有 survivor 是名词，表示能在困境中生存者、幸存者或是生还者。下一个学到 opposite 是形容词，形容对面的、另一边的或是相反的。 Frozen 则是形容结冰的、冰冻的或冷冻的。Geography 是名词，它可以指地理、地理学或是地形。Continent 是名词，表示洲或是大陆。而文法的部分，我们第一个学到片语 lie in something， 表示问题或解决方法等等，它存在于什么什么。第二个学到 not A but B， 表示不是 A 而是 B。注意这个用法中 A、B 的词性必须相同。第三个学到 by the time， 引导时间副词子句，可以表达到什么的时候，在什么之前。第四个学到 come into being， 表示开始存在、诞生或者是形成的意思。好，那以上是今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Hey, 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 it's Kiwi on the street.
I'm Kiki.
And I'm Winnie. And today we are going to try a trend that I saw on social media. So basically, I'm going to make a facial expression. You are going to make the sound that you think matches the facial expression.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Sounds like it's gonna be fun.
Okay, this is the I make the face, you make the sound challenge. First facial expression.
Okay, that looks like a grimace. So you're kind of like frowning, a kind of look of disgust. Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Very, very good. Okay. Facial expression number 2.
Okay, that looks like a pout because you've got your lower lip sticking out and you're kind of like frowning. All right.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. Last but not least, I have this facial expression.
Are you squinting? That's a squint, okay, because your face is all squished together. Your eyes are closed really tight. Okay.
Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. That's not what I was expecting, but it's still pretty good. Maybe you guys should try this challenge.
Winnie, you were really good at making facial expressions.
And your sound effects were actually pretty funny. But next time, I want to try making the sound effects because that looks like a lot of fun. Well, that's all we have for today. Maybe there's a trend that we can do next time. But for now, remember to follow us on Instagram and send us a DM or an email if there's anything you want to say in English and you just don't know how. Kiki, do you have anything you want to say?
Beep pop.
Oh, well, Kiwi later.